So welcome everyone again. This is a very interesting moment for many of you because it's the C Photo Competition Award ceremony. We have already presented you some of the achievements gained by some of the projects during the plenary session, through the videos, you have in the catalogs, but also you have had time probably to visit the photos out there, also showing some results of the projects, because we think that the project's results can be also summarized through an image, and that was the aim of our C Photo competition, because the photos can capture the essence of a project. And the aim of the photo competition was really to
transnational cooperation in
this
the
is
area
not.
is
Can
producing
we
some valuable
go back
results
to the
for our
presentation and go one photo after another? Like this, you will have time to see all the photos submitted. 104 photos were submitted, and you can see the tick. These are the 50 which receive a highest number of points. All the projects were invited to submit photos until April. And let's talk about a bit more in detail about this photo competition.
So, all photos basically had to represent any of the 122 approved projects. Obviously, they had to show the topic and or the achievements gained by the project. And had to convey also a clear message that had to be related to project aims and achievements, and that could be easily recognizable. Aesthetic quality, creativity of the photo had to be taken into consideration when submitting the photos.
And as I told you before, the photos we received were 104 from 37 projects. And we had 3 weeks with online voting. Everyone was invited to send their votes for the best photos. And we received 584 votes online. And then the managing bodies of the program formed a jury. And according to this, the votes online and the jury selection, we selected the 50 best photos of the photo competition. And among the best 20 photos, we selected the 3 winners. We still have, we need to stop here. A bit more. There are 104 photos. And we can have a look to all of them.
When we had to select the photos, as Eloy said,
You can stop.
as Eloy said,
To maintain the tension.
da-da-da-dun. So we had to consider aesthetic quality, creativity, and also the program aim, which means the cooperation spirit and also the project achievements. Those were the criteria that were used by the Joint Technical Secretariat and the Managing Authority to select the top 3 photos that will be awarded today. Obviously, we took also into consideration the number of votes cast online. But I think you have been waiting for the award, and I think we can go now on in awarding the 3rd prize. All the photos. I don't know what is inside here. So, the 3rd prize. The title of this photo, Breaking Through, expresses how difficult it is for the Roma to get out of the turbulent and agitated circumstances they are at the moment, but it is possible if they have the tools and the courage, and PAIR's project aims to show the evidence that this is possible. The photo was taken in Pécs, Hungary, during the on-the-spot workshop that was organized by the PAIR's project. Please, Mr. Laszlo Moravcic, you're invited to the stage to receive the award.
Photographer. Let's.
The 2nd prize. Well, actually, this photo was for the JTS the top winner in terms of creativity. It took us actually some moments to realize what the photo was trying to tell us. A good hydromorphological status of a river is shown also by the varied and valuable habitat. And one of the species which has been monitored by the Danube Parks project in this respect is the little ringed plover, a little bird that camouflages its eggs on the river sediment. So the presence of this bird indicates the good river dynamic. I challenge you to find the eggs here. So overall, we can say that this photo stands for the hidden natural values, for the river dynamics of the Danube, and it is an appeal for conservation and restoration. And I kindly invite Mr. Georg Frank to the stage to receive the award.
Thank you, Eloy. Yes, this is some photo.
With you, of course.
Yeah.
May I say so one sentence?
Very
If
quick.
you like the picture, one of the outputs of our project is a photo archive. And of course, I'm very proud that this picture found big interest. So all stakeholders, all people interested in Danube are kindly invited to have a look on the photo archive. And soon you will find also one of the Oscar photos on it. So thank you.
He never missed the opportunity to promote his project. That's very good.
And the winner is... Suspense. So, better promotion, management, and preservation of natural assets and resources of mountain areas are key aims for sustainability. Promotion of sustainable tourism in the Kalimani National Park in Romania has linked the territorial development to the valorization and protection of such sensitive area. The photo shows the good results reached by the Kalimani National Park through the management plan that managed to increase the number of tourists who found an attractive, organized, and valuable area to visit. Mrs. Mariella Del Poeta, you're kindly invited on the stage to get your award.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. So that was it for the Sea Photo Competition Award. We thank you, all of you, for submitting such a huge number of photos, and we will try to disseminate them in any event, future event, even if not in the Southeast Europe program, maybe in the 3 new programs launch events. And now we have also heard about the capitalization session. You have in your agendas information about this session. You have a leaflet with information about the capitalization strategy, and we can say is one of the aims of the program as such, because the project have gained many results, but in many cases, thanks to the joint work with other projects in related topics, they have achieved even bigger impacts of the results, or they have created new results. For that, we will have a very interactive session in a kind of talk show style. And my colleagues Zornitza Tsoneva and Simona Ene will moderate this session. And I would like to give the floor to my colleague Zornitza Tsoneva. She's Quality Assurance Manager of the Southeast Europe GTS, and she will introduce you these capitalization strategy achievements. Thank you.
So welcome everybody to the capitalization session. We're going to have like 1 hour and 15 minutes for this session, and I would appeal to everybody to have a bit of patience if we run like 10 minutes late a bit. I hope you had some snacks during the coffee break for this purpose. You may remember that last year at the annual event in Bucharest, we launched the capitalization initiative of the Southeast Europe program. But actually, capitalization has been going on for a bit longer than that. And some of you also have experience of capitalization in other programs, not only in Southeast Europe program. So that's why today we would like to briefly talk about what is the difference in the capitalization within the Southeast Europe program, why it is different, why it matters, and then we are going to talk about how it actually worked on the ground, and for this purpose we will need some help. So I would like to invite on the stage some 9 panelists today, so a lot of people. Please take your seats. So we have Felix, who is going to respond on behalf of the capitalization poll on innovation, governance and policy. Then we have Andrea, who is going to talk about competitive SMEs support services. Then Borbala is going to respond to low carbon communities. Venelina on climate change adaptation. Georg will be speaking about nature protection. Alberto will talk about multimodal accessibility to primary networks. Regional mobility is another topic, and we have another Alberto talking about it. And we have greener transport with Gerhard and Bela on employment and demographic issues. But let's give them some time to get comfortable in their chairs, and let's talk about what capitalization is according to us. So has anybody of you here participated in any of the capitalization seminars that we organized? Can I see? Perfect, so you already know what capitalization is about, right? I don't have to tell you anything. So basically, as I said, there are different program approaches to capitalization, and it is very fashionable to talk about capitalization these days. We all know this is a kind of a financial term, but how does it correspond to territorial cooperation? What does it have to do with it? Well, in our case, we decided that no project is an island. So you cannot simply keep your own outputs to yourself and say that you are successful. So in terms of capitalization, for us it means that knowledge is very much like value. If it is not like money, if it is not in circulation, that it doesn't have value. So that's the main idea behind our capitalization. And the approach that we adopted was that there is no additional funding, and so it's up to the projects to decide whether they want to take part in this initiative or not. We developed a kind of a strategy with some guidelines as to what activities could be considered capitalization activities, what kind of outputs we expect, but it was really up to the projects to define their own strategy within each of the 14 thematic poles that were created in the capitalization. So it meant that we were very much just a facilitator. We were the lever that lifted off the initiative off the ground, but it was the projects that did all the work. Thank you for this. So capitalization happened on 2 levels. There was the level of the projects, and we're going to hear about this in a second. But there is also the program level capitalization, and these are 3 main activities that we did on program level. The first thing was that we collected the outputs that were already finished into a library, or it's a safe box where you can search by topic, you can search also by the type of output, and very importantly by country. So if you want to know what has been done on innovation, let's say in Romania, you can find out by searching through this output library. This is an ongoing process, so we keep uploading outputs as soon as they're finalized here. Then another ongoing process is a kind of analysis that we started last year, and it has to do with the socio-economical challenges that were identified for Southeast Europe at the beginning of the program. You may know that each program is created with a purpose. So first you have to do an territorial analysis to find out what are the strengths, the weaknesses, the challenges in this particular area. And based on this, each program then defines what it will do. So based on this, we started analyzing how our projects are addressing these weaknesses that were identified 7 years ago and what has been done so far through territorial cooperation. So it is, again, an ongoing process because with each finished project, more information is added. But it is important because in each topic, which is not necessarily the priority areas of the program, you can find out what has been done, for instance, concerning climate change adaptation, and what has been done concerning brownfields. So all this information you can find there. And of course, it is important to notice what is not there, because what is not there is enough for what you can still do in the future with the future programs. And of course, last but not least, we organize several thematic events to help our projects network with each other and to exchange information. For us, the most important purpose of these events was to collect feedback from the projects about the future programs. And tomorrow you're going to hear about the 3 new programs. At these events, we asked our projects to brainstorm and give some recommendations how they see their topic tackled in the future programs. So which stakeholders they consider important, what kind of activities they think should be supported, and whether from the management point of view, they have recommendations for improvement, or if something they consider a good practice should be kept in the future. I'm very happy to say that this feedback was actually very welcome by the programming bodies of the 3 new programs. So it is already incorporated into the design process of the 3 new programs. So that was about the program level capitalization. But now we come to the most important part.
In order to give you a very good, to illustrate better the achievements of this capitalization process, but also the work behind these achievements, we have drafted a set of questions that we would like to ask our participants. And we will start, first of all, I would like to ask them, first of all, how this capitalization exactly work, and what did you share with the others, and why was this important for the success of your project?
Hello. I'm representing the Pole 1 that was in charge of innovation, governance and policy, pooling 11 projects. Actually, all these projects deal with new mechanisms for policymakers that like formal cooperation platforms, capacity building for evaluation, as you have heard today, foresight initiatives, policy learning mechanisms in that field, strategy development, and multi-level governance development, all nice words. But actually, how does a capitalization strategy is set up? Here we had a roadmap of activities, and all the 11 Pole members contributed. We had actually one important effort was to disseminate preliminary. We had a joint project fair in March, and there we had the opportunity to hold 2 back-to-back meetings of projects where it is an opportunity to get more stakeholders involved, because the target group of these type of actions are always the stakeholders in research and technology policy making and strategy development and so on. So we had the chance to do it back to an important project that was targeting the Western Balkan countries. It was the Western Balkan country INCONET, and they had a final event, and we had the opportunity to put our 2 events back to back there. What was a good opportunity to have a good outreach, because one must take into consideration that there are several policy coordination actions ongoing. There is, for the Western Balkan countries, action, there is the Southeast Europe 2020 strategy maintained by the Regional Cooperation Council. There are also the Western Balkan countries regional research and innovation strategy that was actually done with support from the DG Enlargement, and there, since the Danube appeared as very important topic with the Danube region strategy, then the EU strategy for the Danube region actually, then the priority area 7 is also important, knowledge, economy, and so on. So, and also we have some international players that are active here. We have the OECD with a pilot scheme, investment compact, being active in that field, and that's not only really the very point for our thematic pole, but for several more. And I would like to say there must be a link up to existing initiatives, and this is also a role of a kind of pooling function of a thematic pole leader. So that is how we acted also with that back-to-back organizing things.
Yes, hi, I'm from the thematic pole low carbon communities. I am number 4. And you mentioned the joint events, and I think for ORPOL one of the best was the joint events organized. We had several ones separately organized, so not depending on any projects, but we were gathering the pole projects. And for example, last year we had the nicest one, I think, which we called barrier brainstorming, because with 12 projects from the thematic pole, we were brainstorming on the common barriers and challenges or projects do face. And then we were trying to find solutions together on those barriers. And at the end, we were trying to figure out together how those solutions could be transferred from one project to the other, as well as from one geographical region to the other. So it was very nice to share these, and there was one more very interesting aspect of this event, which was that it was hosted by the REIC, which is the Regional Education and Information Center on Sustainable Development. They are located in Sarajevo, and they are working in the sea area. And they were so kind to basically host our event in terms of catering, venue and everything in the framework of the annual summer school they organized, because each year they make a summer school for university students in the field of nature and energy. And those students were actually sitting there with us at the brainstorming. They participated, they gave their very fresh thoughts, they also had very up-to-date knowledge in the field, and also vice versa. I assume that they gained something from the discussions. And as such, what was really special in that is that we can say that ORPOL managed to reach a very special target group with this event, which was the new generation of energy experts in the field.
So hello, I'm representing pole number 6. So I'm speaking here for, hopefully I'm speaking for 7 projects working for nature protection in Southeast Europe. And I fully agree with you when you said, these joint events, these are highlights. And when I prepared myself for this panel discussion, I also wanted to highlight our joint events. But this morning session changed my perspective, because you have to imagine in Bucharest, we were sitting together for the first time, some projects, and we agreed on 3 points which we want to stress in our capitalization process. And one was the exchange of experience. Of course, we had a plan to exchange our key documents. We want to use the expertise from other projects. We also planned to have some joint events as highlights, but we also agreed that we want to try at least to communicate some joint interests, some joint messages. And as we have just learned, we did a very good job on this, because in the photo competition, 2 projects from our pole are in the winning. So obviously we did a good job in this. So, but that was just a side step. Coming back, so our pole was, the composition of our pole was interesting, because it was separated in projects working more on rivers and working more on mountains. So it was not easy to find out the common goal, the common challenge. But it was clear for us, and now I'm coming back, that I agree with you, that we need a joint event, something like a backbone for our cooperation. And here Green Mountain took very early the leadership, because they offered their final conference in Brussels as our joint event. And I think this was one important step for the somehow successful capitalization process, because very early we defined to have this event, so we had time to prepare ourselves for the event, and Green Mountain was really interested and willing to invite and to include all projects in the planning of this event and in the setup of the event. And I think that's a very concrete and important sign that you invested a lot of time and resources to include all partners. So, for example, you offered a preparatory meeting in Budapest, and this shows already that they also had expectations on the joint partnership going to the joint event. Yeah, so that was this joint event was definitely one of the important milestones for us. But what I also would like to highlight is that I think the cooperation within our pole, so all sitting together with nature conservation experts, was fruitful and was successful. But even as important was the inclusion of projects from other poles. So, for example, in our capitalization process, we set up a very good cooperation with Pillar 7, with a project representing navigation. We have heard about Nevada Tour today, and this is a capitalization process crossing the poles. And maybe this was even as fruitful, because we really were able to build up the trust, to exchange our experiences. We started joint initiatives, and we are now in the phase also to discuss how to cooperate in the future Danube program. And this cooperation found strong support also from the EU strategy, which is highly stressing this cross-sectoral cooperation, and also some other key stakeholders at the Danube, for example, the ICPDR, highlights this cross-sectoral cooperation as one important step.
Thank you, Georg. My name is Alberto. I represent Pole 7, Accessibility. Indeed, the example that you quoted, this meeting between Nevada Duo and Danube Parks, was really important to me, because here we really see the importance of cross-fertilization between poles. We said that projects are not islands, and this is true, and poles are not islands either. Especially when we have the same object of the study, which is rivers, but from different point of views. And the Danube is really a good example. On one side, you have the need to improve the economic sector, so to use it as an infrastructure. On the other side, you feel the urge to protect it from the environmental point of view. So on one side, you have the need for cross-fertilization, but on the other side, you also feel the urge to focus on your own project. But these examples are really good of meeting together and putting together all the needs that we might have in common. Another example for us is the joint presentation of ACROSSEA, which is Pole 7, and ATTAC, which is Pole 8, during the ministerial conference last year, which was organized within ACROSSEA project. And being a ministerial conference, so high level, high institutional level, it was very important to present the results of those two projects in order for the ministries to take up on them. And this is very good. In my point of view, the role of capitalization is mainly also of avoid double spending if possible. So exploiting the chances that each project has, like for dissemination, to present the results of similar projects.
I think that we had quite similar experiences, but as well as cooperation together. I'm here representing pole number 9, greener transport systems. So we were not discussing about how to make, for example, painting the truck or the vessel green, or painting containers green. So we have done this in a quite nice joint development approach. First of all, we came together during one of the first meetings, and we wanted to have first understanding, first language, first mission. What does a greener transport system means for us? Because we are coming from Austria, Italy, Greece, Romanian partners were involved, so we had to find our common ideas. And we agreed that greener transport system should address on smart technologies. Smart means intelligent innovation. It must be green, of course. Green means sustainable, but also lowering greenhouse gases emissions. It must be cross-thematic, because if you deal with transport, you have to include as well technologies, IT, social dimension, environmental issues, of course, as well. It must be intermodal. You have to include all the different modes which exist. Of course, we included air and space for this territory, but we included railway, road, waterways, and the Danube. This was the first step which we have done in our first workshop. And after the workshop, we have been asked by the GTS, do you want to split up in 2 different groups because you are so heterogeneous you have in your Pole 9, and we all agreed no. Because we want to stick together, we want to work together, because we want to learn from each other's, let me say, problems and challenges and find new common ideas. So this was the first workshop. In the second one, we were reflecting about future problems, future challenges, let me say, what is important for the future, for the society in the field of green transport. And we said, okay, first of all, we need green infrastructure. Infrastructure means roads, railways, waterways, maritime links. This must be optimated and must be greener and more efficient. We also looked on the hubs, means port, for example, so railway stations, that also they become more efficient and eco-friendly. And finally, you have something to move on. Also the services, like the container services or the cargo transportation services, must be efficient, green, and having lower emissions. We also recognize that not only technical aspects and legal aspects are important for us, we have to look also on the people side, on the social dimension and the human being side, because we deal in the field of transport also with people. We have drivers, we have captains, we have workers, and also they can have an impact on greener transport systems if they have this in their minds and in their working. And finally, the last workshop which we have had this year in April in Budapest was one of the most successful workshops which we have had, because we had more than 30 participants from 8 different SE projects, so 8 projects out of 120 from 8 different countries. So I know how Eloy was quite busy to bring you here together, because I did manage a similar smaller workshop in Budapest this year. This was, let me say, the burden for doing this, but the benefit was that in Budapest we developed 20 new project ideas, new, let me say, new ideas on greener transport systems. And I think this is our main achievement in our pole, which we can also use, let me say, for the future, for the next programming periods.
Okay, thank you very much. Alberto Preti from the Institute for Transport and Logistics in Bologna. Just a few words to say that I'm speaking also on behalf of my colleagues, Georgia Ifedopoulou from the Hellenic Institute for Transport, who couldn't be here, and Marco Mobrici from ITL, who are the real leaders of Pole 8 on regional mobility. I will not go into single details about outcomes, because I have something to say also in the second and third rounds. Probably just 3 highlights on how it actually worked within Pole 8. I think the first highlight concerns the fact that it worked quite intensively. Of course, there were different workshops, meetings, participation to external events, but probably the key element is that the flow of cooperation within the pole was quite spontaneous. And I think that's quite positive, because single project and single partners felt free to ask advice to the other ones on specific technical issues. The second one is that, and probably I think this is an important part of capitalization, is the fact that it allowed the development of, let's say, economies of scale, in the sense that working together and speaking outside, talking together, had multiplying effect in terms of impacts and visibility. The third thing, which is, I think, common also to the previous speeches, is that of the economies of scope. I mean, there were different technical results, there were different topics, and in some cases also quite different subtopics. In some ways, we were able, let's say, to upgrade the results of the single projects thanks to the complementarity and synergies developed within the pole. It's just 3 highlights for the start.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm very happy, Gerhard, that you did a mini annual event for the C program just before this annual event. Maybe next time we can hire you to help us. Okay, so now we heard that there is a kind of a work within one thematic pole, or work between thematic poles. But we also noticed that many of you went outside the Southeast Europe program and went on cooperating with other programs and initiatives. Could you tell us about this?
Yes, I would like to take the word. Some projects developed individual cooperation with initiatives outside of the Southeast Europe, of course. But I think all this in this innovation governance and development of innovation systems and so on matters and governance related things, they all have to do with the development of the national innovation systems. And here we have a tendency of the European Union to influence in a way, in a strategic way, through the smart specialization strategies. That's I think is a main point where all these matters are taken into consideration. So there is a clear synergy with these outside ongoing processes. And I think there we have contributed as all projects and a bit more as we have been working together to these processes, to have the capacities at hand to go for these new processes. I think that's a main contribution of all the whole projects and all what was done together. And of course there are individual cooperations outside. Let's say with this evaluation topic in research, technology development and innovation, we were also connecting the very evaluation experts from the countries with the evaluation unit at DG Research and Innovation. So it goes even beyond that program of DG Regio. And there are individual examples like cooperation with similar projects in other transnational cooperation programs, like we had a cluster policy project, so-called. It's still ongoing. It's a strategic project from the third call. And we had a Clustrat project that is funded under the Central Europe program. So they have a similar field of action where there is an outreach. I wouldn't say it's a very action of the thematic pole, but projects are cooperating and it's good to know and one can learn from that. And one should not forget that all these projects are not isolated initiatives. They contribute to a broader policy context and they also address by nature initiatives. If you go in that topic of innovation things, then it is also linked with the DG Enterprise. For instance, they have a regional innovation monitor. There we can look in the very region what is going on, are there strategies, are there measures, is there, let's say, evaluation. So it's a bit broader than only thinking of having similar projects in other programs. Yeah, and then we have this function that goes back to the projects when you have a message to address throughout all the projects or coming from one project, getting to all these, let's say 11 in our case, then the very projects have a filter function. You do not pass all to your stakeholders. It's so difficult to work with them, to get them on board in your initiatives, that you do not give unfiltered information to them and overload them with information they will not read in the end. So I think these are the main messages from my side.
Yes, I completely agree with Felix that these projects are not isolated, and also we considered in our poll that the sea area itself is not an isolated area, and by recognizing this, I think we took the cooperation with projects outside the sea area quite seriously. We created them an official category. They were our fellow members or fellow projects. And all in all, we managed to, I talk about active projects, we managed to collect 7 projects outside the sea area. For example, Zero Waste project, which is funded by the MET program, or Legend, which is an IPA cross-border cooperation. But we also had a Central, an Interreg, and some intelligent energy projects. Maybe the most interesting one was the AIM project, which is a capitalization project from the Alpine Space Area. So this means that our thematic pool, gathering 12 SOSIS projects were cooperating with another thematic pole, gathering 6 projects from the Alpine Space area. And that's what we called among us the capitalization of capitalization, because 2 groups were gathering, and I think it was very nice and very useful, and all of them were basically so even sometimes more active than other sea projects, and they participated at our joint events. They joined our materials produced, like the position paper or a stakeholder database, of which I will of course talk later. But I think it had a very nice added value to widen our horizon outside the sea area towards the western and central part of Europe, and to see their approaches, especially their networking approaches, were very different from ours, and also the challenges they are facing with compared to our problems we are had. So that's it.
If I may also add something, even for us, also for this competitive SME support service, it has been quite relevant and is interesting to look a bit outside, right? This our regional approach, due to the fact that when we selected the topic where we wanted to work together, which was mainly, and we will get back to it later on finance and SMEs, we decided also to look at what other programs and how other programs were looking into this focus area. And so we did a sort of project picking activity. We selected 18 projects coming from the 7th framework program to DG employment and others, and then 6 were actively cooperating. And by the way, tomorrow we will be at the final conference of the MESSE project, where we have been asked to bring in this perspective of the thematic pole. And how did it work? Basically, we provided them with the structure, checklist and questionnaires that we are using to collect the evidences on finance and ask from their point of view. And I really believe and hope that these different perspectives will emerge in the final document, and I really appreciate the way they have been cooperating with us.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Venelina Verbova, and I work for the Regional Environmental Center for Central and Eastern Europe. Today I'm representing Pole 5, which is on climate change adaptation. The work of the pole is coordinated by Orient Gate project. The projects that belong to this pole aim to address various aspects related to climate change adaptation. As you know, climate change is a complex, multifaceted issue which affects a variety of policy areas. Therefore, some of the projects that belong to this pole deal with direct climate change impacts and deal with adaptation completely, while others relate or integrate some climate change elements, especially projects which focusing on disaster risk prevention or nature conservation. With regards to cooperation outside the Southeastern Europe program area, there are some examples I could mention, but before that I would like to point out that our cooperation was also focused on the projects which are funded under the Southeastern Europe program. And the examples of this cooperation are similar to the ones that have been already mentioned by the colleagues from the other poles. But speaking about the activities outside Southeastern European program area, I would like to mention that we started to look for synergies with climate adaptation related projects that are supported by Interreg 4C and Central Europe program, and we map out several areas that are interesting and that include possibilities for cooperation. There are also some methodologies and tools developed by Southeastern European projects, but also other outputs developed by other climate change projects funded under other ETC programs that could be replicated. So definitely there is an opportunity to further explore these possibilities, and we would like to do so by reflecting these conclusions in a policy brief that we would like to develop by the end of December. And finally, I would like to mention that this is also very closely related to the recently launched European strategy on climate change adaptation that highlights the need for strengthening the knowledge base and such opportunities for cooperation between projects and the different funded and the various ETC programs should be strengthened. And maybe two other examples I could mention of cooperation outside the program area. One of the project partners reported that cooperation was established with a project focused on flood defense and funded under one of the DG Humanitarian Aid financing instruments. Also, we are exploring opportunities for cooperation with the NPCVC MED project. So this is from my side for now.
Thank you, Audrey. This one. So projects are not islands, poles are not islands, and programs are not either islands either. And this is why we also looked outside of the Southeast Europe program, even because there are some programs which have some overlap in eligible areas like the Central Europe. So one example that I could quote is a meeting and sharing of experiences between two projects of Southeast Europe program belonging to Pole 7, which are Nevada Duo on inland navigation and Watermode on sea accessibility in Southeast Europe on one side, and two projects of Central Europe concerning intermodal connectivity, empiric, and in WAPO concerning inland navigation. The themes, the topics were very similar, if not the same. And after this meeting, some areas of cooperation were clearly identified. One was the multimodal accessibility with the RIS implementation of the Danube and the starting RIS implementation or studying in the on the Po River. But there was also training, which was considered important, for instance, in the Empiric project, and in general the connectivity and accessibility. But Howard-Pole also had the chance to interact directly with the European Commission. Within the Across-Sea project, the interaction with the DG Transport has been, say, continuous over the last months and years. And the European Commission, together with the World Bank, finances a project called REBIS 2.0, which is a continuation of the REBIS 1.0 project, which ended in 2002. And we had a fruitful meeting in Trieste in last April, where we actually exchanged data. So this is a very important example of how European money, which is at the end of the day our money of taxpayers, is efficiently used in order to avoid double spending.
Sorry, thank you very much. I will just bring a couple of examples for Pole 8. The first one concerns intelligent transport systems, which are basically a very important element for the improvement of regional mobility of passengers, but also, of course, of freight, and of the really organizational issues beyond the development of an ITS. starting from the CEITS project within the Southeast Europe program, and by cooperating with the CIP project, which is Compass VD, and also with the Ertico ITS Network Association, a follow-up of CITS came out, and it was approved within the 10T program. So actually that's a way how talking among programs and of course among projects allowed, let's say, to build on past results. The second example is that of the Rail for Sea project, which is the strategic project on rail passenger transport in the Southeast Europe, which cooperated with the NOTES project. In this case, it's a 7th FP project, basically on the outcomes concerning governance models and stakeholders engagement for regional passengers mobility. These are just two examples. And I agree with Alberto, projects are not islands. I like this concept so much.
Yeah, also in our case, in thematic poll number 11 on employment and demographic change, we have two projects related to migration, and you saw the movie and the presentation on one of them, CMIG. So we thought that migration is an issue which is sufficiently covered within the poll, but then we accidentally found out that there is another project called Return, funded by the Central Europe program, which deals with returning migrants. And our two projects were dealing with migration, like either immigration or out-migration, like sort of a one-direction issue, and they were dealing with returning migrants, which is a whole different story. So we started an intensive cross-reading of each other's documents and cross-inviting each other to different events, and I think that this was really a fruitful cooperation between us and them. So on both sides there were benefits of this watching outside from a different professional and thematic perspective.
Thank you very much. And because before Felix mentioned about the stakeholders, I would like to ask you, how successful were you in engaging the stakeholders? And were you more successful than you would have done it individually as a project? So the poll managed to engage more people in the results?
Actually, it's a question of information provision and being engaged and taking up such ideas, having time to participate in events of projects. Because when you look on the projects, you have always a very limited number of participants. You have probably some stakeholders involved, some universities involved, some agencies involved, also stakeholders, of course, or owners of programs, let's say. You have the municipality, so you have a broad variety, and you must get to the right ones. So that's a question of outreach. So you have inside a poll, let's talk about this innovation thing, what I'm representing here, you have a lot of different stakeholder communities. They are overlapping somehow, because it's a competitive call when you when you get such project. So you try to have somehow separated also the topics, but not the stakeholders, because they are overlapping. That is one thing. So what do the projects then? Because there come the activities. It's not only the poll. The projects have events, they have training events, capacity building and so on. There you have the outreach. There you want to have the right people participating in the right events. And so this is what the poll can serve for. It can increase outreach. So we had a poll fair having an outreach to the outside projects and these who are funded in the Transnational Cooperation Program. And you have also a challenge, because you have in a poll different types of projects. You have one in charge of innovation in the food sector. That is a bit separated from others that are like, say, have more horizontal, not sectoral topics to cover, like 4C, that is going in the direction of ICT. Others are developing evaluation capacities. Others are working with cluster initiatives. All this has a different level of stakeholders and also different kind of stakeholder involvement. So it's not easy. So the projects once more act as filters, and they want to have their communities to be addressed and look also in the other projects what can be of benefit for their communities they work with. So the question is always, when you have a capitalization initiative like that, pooling projects, are there enough resources? It's in a way a good approach. It came a bit late, and there was no funding. As you have seen, there is no additional funding. So that's a real challenge for the projects to get on board more persons. Externals to a project should get benefit of it because it's public funding and you must be open. That's a principle. So yeah, it's difficult to cooperate intensively if there are no resources. A small hint to the program management.
Yeah, I think you said the key word is in terms of stakeholders to have the right one. So there are a lot of, but how to have the right one, this is the question. And I think in that regard, Paul has made a step forward by creating an enormous database of stakeholders last year. The database, I have to mention, was elaborated by a Greek organization, Daphne, which is or was a partner in the EFFECT project. And this database collects each stakeholders of each project partner in the thematic pool, which means 18 projects stakeholders, which gathers up to 2,400 stakeholders, and of course you could say that, well, okay, and what so? But what we asked from the project, and I hope it worked well, is that we asked them to only give the contact of active stakeholders. So no sleeping partners are in this database. And it is a searchable database, so you can find, of course, the contact of the stakeholder, but also the contact who was giving the contact, so you can have it as a kind of reference. You can find, of course, the country and the type of organization and the field of interest and knowledge as keywords of that certain organization. And as such, especially now that I assume all of us has started the preparation for the new transnational projects, this database in terms of creating linkages and partnership will have a very nice added value. And here I would refer back to the involvement of projects from outside the sea area, because with those fellow projects we cooperated with, we managed to involve also some other countries outside from the sea area. So we have dozens of stakeholders from France, but also from Sweden. And especially now that the, let's say, geographical coverage of the funding programs will change a bit, and we will also have to have a look to the left side, let's say, for the Interreg Europe and URBEC programs. I think this database will have a very nice added value to all of us. And actually it's also available at the website of the C program, so you can download it from there.
You mentioned that we all want to reach the correct and the best stakeholders, but of course we're all limited to get them, and I was thinking what is limiting us to reach them, and of course sometimes we are not aware what are our main stakeholders. Then of course we are all limited in the capacity, finance, time and so on. Sometimes our voice is not strong enough to get heard at the important stakeholders. And sometimes the frame conditions don't allow to reach them. And so I would like to give you very simple examples how this cooperation helped us to overcome these limiting factors. Some of them are really simple. And of course the first is, if you work together, then it widens your horizon and you are aware of new stakeholders, you get aware of their problems and you get in cooperation. And that is why I think this cross-sectoral cooperation is here very important. Sometimes it's even, the stakeholders are even out of your geographical scope. That it was realized with this final conference in Brussels. So Green Mountain planned this final conference very early. So they had in mind already they want to go to Brussels because they want to reach the stakeholders there. And I think that was unique in our poll. All other projects didn't have the Brussels stakeholders, the decision makers there on their radar. So your final event helped all of us to get and now coming also to frame conditions. We didn't have mentioned it in our application form, so even the frame conditions maybe would not allow us to go there for big lobbying, but now this capitalization process helped us to go there, and nearly all projects used this opportunity to meet the stakeholders in Brussels there. Some used it for
training to get a deeper insight how this lobbying works in Brussels. Some really put a lot of efforts to meet some stakeholders there. So this was one project opened us the door to go to Brussels. Sounds simple, is simple, but it was helpful. I mentioned sometimes our voice is not strong enough. This is also what we experienced at this event. Yeah? We organized a panel discussion and we are looking for a topic which is relevant for all projects of our pole. And then we decided to promote habitat corridors. That's important for river projects as well as for mountain projects. And several projects invested their time to get important stakeholders to this panel discussion. And then there was a discussion in Brussels bringing together the projects with the stakeholders. And for example, from our perspective, we are very happy to see that in the upcoming Danube program, this habitat corridor is one of the key topics. And yeah, so this helped us as projects to already to work on this topic, to get in contact with the stakeholders, and now we hopefully have a better starting conditions for the follow-up project. Yeah, the stronger voice. Yeah, and time scale. We are also limited in resources, and I think one of the big limiting factor for all our capitalization work, and in particular for reaching the stakeholders, is that our projects are very limited in time. And I just want to give you one example how this capitalization process can enlarge also your time scale. So very soon, one of our projects, the Sea River project, will have their final conference in Vienna. And some projects of our pole will be represented there. So even this time scale can be enlarged by this capitalization process.
Thank you, Georg. You mentioned Brussels as Pole 7, so concerning accessibility, interconnectivity. We wondered who are our stakeholders. There are maybe for us at least two macro categories, which is on one side we have the policymakers, on the other side we have the end users of the infrastructures. So we try to, and we think we will succeed and will succeed in addressing both macro categories. Concerning the policymakers, we will exploit the chance that the Across Sea project gives us, which is the second workshop at the European Parliament to be held on November the 11th. Where we will also present not only the Across Sea results, but also the Pole 7 results in general. And we think this is a very good opportunity for all the Pole 7 projects to be presented in order for the new term in office and the new MEPs to take up on the results of the Pole 7 of Southeast Europe program. And concerning the end users of the infrastructures, so they are for us the logistic operators. And we tried to reach them by participating in a joint conference at the Transport Logistics Fairs in Munich last year in June. This is the most important logistics fairs in Europe, which takes place only once every 2 years. And we had the joint presentation of ADB multi-platform project and Across Sea. And this is also a very useful tool. Also other projects from other programs use this exhibition in Munich to present results. And this was the case, for instance, of the WAPO project, which presented from Central Europe, which presented results in in Munich, and other projects as well. So we think that by presenting these projects in Brussels Arena and logistics or end users or our end users are present is very important and useful tool.
Thank you. I will bring just a couple of examples. Well, the first one, when you talk about regional mobility and you talk about, let's say, for example, transport hubs, of course you have different types of stakeholders involved within the decision-making process concerning policies and concerning services development. One first example is the synergy which was made between ATTAC and the Rail4Sea project. And the core theme is that of sustainable urban mobility plans. As we know, SUMS have quite a lot of need and efforts for governance of stakeholders and in the process of activating stakeholders for building the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan. So in some means, ATAC, which has developed SUMPs in European cities, has opened the door for the following implementation of these urban mobility plans, which was done, for example, in Thessaloniki by the Rail for Sea project. And I think that's also quite useful because actually, as I said, you have a variable geometry of stakeholders in different projects. So this capitalization process allowed also clear messages to the stakeholders and to the local community so that you plan policies and then you develop them. The second example is capitalization among programs, which actually fit quite well because it's about RailHack, which is the strategic project in Central Europe about rail transport for passengers, and Rail for Sea. In this case, the, let's say, link takes place with two events. Of course, the events are the tours, so there's going to be a big conference in Bologna organized by the province of Bologna, lead partner of Rail for Sea, and Emilia-Romagna region, lead partner of RailHack. And we think that putting the two projects together increases the voice of the two projects towards the two key stakeholders, which are regional and local policymakers in transport and rail operators and public transport operators. The second event is going to be in Brussels, so obviously the target stakeholder is the European Commission and European bodies, and also in this case having two projects, as I said in the beginning, makes us speak louder in some ways.
Yes, and I would like to add the point that even international organizations can be stakeholders for pool activities, which was our case with IOM, the International Organization for Migration, that through its regional office in Vienna was very active from the beginning. And because they were active in the Danube strategy, and for drafting strategies they needed professional inputs from our side. So it was really, last year we had a really lucky moment. So they needed input for their professional work, and we started to generate outputs. So it was when we started to work together with them, and we keep on working together with them.
It's really impressive that sometimes together you can reach to stakeholders that you thought were out of your league at the beginning, right? But we heard already that some of you mentioned position papers, some recommendations, common tools. So what exactly were the outcomes of the capitalization for you? Did you create something together within the polls, including any project ideas for the future?
Yeah, I continue where I started in the last round. Actually, the involved project perceived the capitalization initiative rather as a dissemination opportunity. And because mainly there were no financial instruments to support better coordination. And the challenge, I would say, for having joint results is that the projects were running in different time spans. So you had 4 calls. The call projects from the first call are all completed. The second call, some of them are still ongoing, or some partners, if they're from IPA countries, are still working on it. And the third and fourth call, these projects are still ongoing, so the strategic projects are still ongoing. So it is very complicated to have intensive cooperation, because what can you share or valorize, capitalize when you are at the beginning of a project? Of course, you have to think about the concept, how to bring forward the things you have developed to the end users. But if you are at the very beginning, it's much more difficult than at the end. But at the end, the project is over and you cannot continue. And so cooperation is really challenged with that. Okay, we set up some kind of a newsletter you can find also outside. It's just to showcase what is in a poll actually. You have also white spots in a poll. So I'm talking more about the challenges than what was actually done. But I think that there are other things that can be shared. There are inside a particular field some common tools that are used, mainly learning tools, I would say. Benchmarking in our case, forward-looking perspective, integration of real action in strategies, and so on. So these are learning methodologies or learning from other methodologies, how they are used in other sectors. So it is a learning opportunity inside the bowl, and as far as possible, a capitalization outside can be supported or promoted. That is what I would say.
Yes, Felix, you mentioned that sometimes it facilitates to look into a specific field, and as I mentioned, we decided to focus on the relationship between finance, financial industry and SME for several reasons, not just because it is a buzzword of the last, I think, 5 or 6 years, but because it's probably the most horizontal, let's call it service need that SMEs have. When they come to you, they ask, okay, we are looking for financial resources for this and that reason, and sometimes if you spend some time with them, you realize that it is not exactly probably the first main issue that they have. So we decided to look further into this. And how did we do it? Basically, we developed questionnaires and checklists which were distributed, as I previously mentioned, among poll members as well as with other projects outside the program area. And the City of Venice also involved an external expert who is currently still guiding us to structure the final document. And this document will basically be organized around 4 main topics or chapters. Basically, the first one is if and how financial actors could be formally more involved in these kind of initiatives and so have a bit a stronger commitment on their side. Second chapter dedicated to strategies to get them involved. And a third one, which is linked to the second one, is how can we turn the financial actors to become, let's say, free of charge service providers. If they don't give us the money, okay, because maybe there is not money there, then probably we have experienced also within the different projects that sometimes these actors, due to the fact that they know the people, they know the territories, they know other enterprises you could be working with, they are the guys you should ask the questions, okay? And questions sometimes are free of charge, okay? And if we find an intelligent way to get them involved, then this could somehow help. And the fourth and last chapter will be to answer the question if there is a third way to finance, okay? If we are facing a period where financial resources are basically missing or they are not immediately available, maybe especially within this cooperation programs, we could identify how public bodies or other actors can pool resources together. And these resources are not necessarily money, but sometimes are brains, sometimes is knowledge, sometimes is relationship. Which will be the target? The target will be at a 60%, I would say, policy level, but 40% also SMEs, which I hope will hopefully use and go through this document.
Yes, we also created paper, which was a position paper, and our target was basically only one. The paper was targeted to the CJTS. It was submitted to ALE in order to support the new programming period with our ideas. And what we were doing, well, it was coming from this barrier brainstorming I mentioned earlier. What we were doing is that we collected those problems and challenges in the region which we as thematic low carbon communities consider to be the most relevant problems in the region. And of course we were ranking them and prioritizing them. And after that we were listing all of our existing project outputs that provide solutions for these problems. So it is important if you start a new funding program to see what is already available and not to reinvent the wheel. As for example, for the lack of capacities at the municipalities, we listed all the online education tools of the Energy Supply project or the decision supporting tools of our sea hydropower project. And after that we were making some basic findings on those problems and risks which are still existing in the region about the already existing project results. And we were analyzing the reasons behind those problems, and we also made some suggestions how those should be targeted by the new program with certain kind of interventions in the field.
Yeah, and also it has been mentioned a couple of times that our voice is stronger together than separately, especially when it comes to decision makers with quite a wide portfolio. Like, for example, mayors of a city might have limited time and limited capacity. So whenever we approach them saying that, hello, we want to talk about migrants with you, we might not get an appointment. But here in Thematic Pole 11, we have projects on Roma integration, on active aging and integration of the elderly, and also on migrants. So we can put our forces together and say that we are going to draft a paper which is about vulnerable and marginalized social groups, which we are doing at the moment. So the last meeting we had on this Monday, so we are really into this process. And we hope that this way we can transmit a message saying that these marginalized social groups are not a burden for local decision makers, but an underused opportunity. So a city might actually get economic and social development out of this if underused human capacities are somehow channeled into the development on the local level.
Okay, I think that there is the second part of my question you deliberately try to avoid. I think with the new project ideas, you have a bit of an intellectual property rights issue. So, any new ideas?
Yeah, well, I will not talk too much about that, exactly for the reason what you mentioned, but I will rather talk about the process, how our thematic pole has developed 4 quite concrete new project ideas from the next funding program. Because what we were considering to be very important is not to start it from out of the blue, you know, but as a first part of our meeting or brainstorming, which was held actually a few weeks ago, we dedicated a certain amount of time to evaluate the lessons learned from our previous projects, and we called it All-in-On group or All-in-On alcoholic group, because we were really honestly discussing what were the mistakes we were doing, what were those risks and problems which could have been targeted at the beginning of the project and could have been avoided. And also, let's be honest, which were those activities which didn't make at the end any sense in the project. And with this bunch of information and lessons learned collected, we passed to the next brainstorming part, where we developed, based on these, the 4 project ideas. These are in the topic of smart metering, green public procurement, energy poverty, and smart historic cities. And what is good in that is that we already have an outline, basically. We have a preliminary partnership for that. Also, based on the draft OPs, we basically know more or less which is the funding program we want to target. And the good news is that for 3 of the ideas from the 4, we already have a committed lead partner. And then in the coming weeks, we will have to, this is waiting for us when we go home. We have to start to make the steps towards partnership building and project drafting, of course, depending on when the codes will be published at the end.
With regards to the climate change adaptation pole, I would like to also highlight that the opportunity to cooperate inside the pole to cooperate on topics that are addressed by several projects also provided a solid basis for identifying ideas and opportunities for further cooperation. And an example of such cooperation in our case was a Horizon 2020 proposal that was developed by some of the Orient Gate partners and Sea Risk partners, which are participating in the climate change adaptation pole. some important aspects with regards to this proposal. I'm not going to go into details on the content of the proposal, but just to mention that the proposal builds very much on the knowledge and experience and the outputs of both projects, and these experiences and outputs will be integrated in the Horizon 2020 proposal. For example, issues related to upgrading the impact, vulnerability, risk indicator catalog. Also, this was an opportunity to enrich the analysis with some new ideas, and this came again from the capitalization work, because through this cooperation, actually, we managed to enhance our competences on the topic. And finally, this was an opportunity also to reach wider community by including in the proposal more research institutes dealing with the topic.
Well, also in Pole 9, Greener Transport Systems, we are quite creative and productive in this field, in the field of new ideas, new proposals. One of the successful examples was that during a workshop in Budapest, we offered 3 different sub-workshops, one on green corridors, means traffic infrastructure, one on greener transport systems, vehicles and vessels, for example, what can be done there. And the last workshop were green hubs, seaports, inner ports, railway stations, what can be improved in this area. And after let me say, half a day later, our 30 experts developed new ideas. In total, 20 new ideas have been developed, which have been clustered afterwards. Could this, for example, ideas implemented in the future Daniel program, or could this be implemented in the future Adriatic-Ionian program or others? So we have done a lot of preparation work on this. You can be happy that I will not explain from number 1 to 19 all the proposals now, because first of all it's too long for you, and second I'm not allowed to do this because in our, let me say, Pole area, so all of the members agreed that we are at the moment at a, let me say, pre-competition area and moment, so therefore we stick this information in one, let me say, proposal database. We're sharing this among our Pole members and partners and to the GTS, of course, but not to the external world at the moment. But I want to give you some, let me say, snapshots and some trends at least for the future. In the field of green corridors and traffic infrastructure, we said we have to promote this more, to bring this to the people, that we have green possibilities, right? Railway networks, waterways, maritime, ocean transportation. And first and second, we have to promote also technologies in this field to make the infrastructure smarter. Let me say, more IT services, which is supporting the existing infrastructure. With regard to transport systems, as one of the future trends was the field of green energy transport, for example, the transport of biomass, the transport of LNG products, so that not only transportation is involved, energy topics are involved, but also energy topics are also belonging to this future trend. Finally, about green hubs, we identified many topics, I would say, but most of them were addressing on how to produce or how to ensure clean energy in hubs, first of all, and what about waste and waste management in hubs like ports or seaports or inland ports, for example. Yeah, there was just some future trends, I would say, and I would be, let me say, very proud if one or more, of course, of these 19 proposals or ideas will see the steps to becoming a future proposal and a future project in the future upcoming programs.
So thank you very much, because our time is up. There is only one more question that we would like to ask you, and to be very brief in answering. It's how do you think that the future programs should support this capitalization exercise, and what can be improved in the future programs? So please feel free to answer.
In 2 minutes maximum.
Very quickly. Yeah. so all these capitalization strategies appeared in 2011 and 2012, and please look in future to bring somehow a line in it to plan it from the very beginning of a program. That is a main question. Do it from the beginning and allow planning between the projects. The main thing. And then look again about the strategic calls if you like to launch such, because white spots appear and one has to be careful if there is at all a good picture of what is covered or uncovered. And look also on this EU strategy for the Danube region, for instance. We have priority area coordinators. They are not also very synchronized with the very programs. So one has to be very, very careful. And then the question of no cost coverage for thematic pole leaders is a challenge. You should look in that. It creates unrealistic expectations of a capitalization strategy, and it's a kind of difficult mission to go for. We are very happy that we had the opportunity. I also would like to thank my colleagues that did it, Ivan and Ines, for that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I also agree with Felix that basically it should be part of the game, right? And sometimes some maybe technical details would help, like for instance, making it a sort of part of the call. And I remember some old programs where you were given a very short time frame to select, for instance, partner projects, which would then be part of your capitalization work, maybe the very first 6 months of each starting project time frame of each call. And maybe also, I know that sometimes mandatory things are not really appreciated, but in this case I think it would help, because we all believe that capitalization is useful. Maybe give some indicators and ask project pilots or however we want to call them, to monitor them and periodically to check how and if this is useful, not only for their projects but for the whole group of projects.
Yes, what you mentioned is a top-down approach. And what I wanted to say is I think that one of the biggest challenges in the future for the managing authorities will be how to find a balance between the top-down and bottom-up approach in the capitalization process, because now it was almost a completely bottom-up approach, which actually was highly appreciated, so I really like that. But next time, especially if you will start to create the synergies, and I fully agree with that approach, from the earliest stage of activities, then at the beginning you will have to have a much stronger top-down approach, which can then be rebalanced somehow with a bottom-up approach. Let's say after half a year, when you will see which are those projects having some capacities, then they can gradually take over that. But I also think it's worth to think over to launch a separate call for that. What I would definitely want to mention before passing the microphone is that what in what regard we would really appreciate the support of the managing authority is the continuation of the results achieved by our capitalization activities, because now that the C program is split, the continuation of the results achieved has to be ensured by somebody, and also it is very important to ensure the synergy building among the 3 new funding programs, and I think that for this the key is in your hands.
Thank you very much. I agree that capitalization activities should start from the beginning of project implementation, but I also think that we should think how to to strengthen the synergies between the projects and to capitalize on all the outputs that they have produced after the project lifetime. And one of the reasons for that is the fact that many of the project outputs, deliverables, are reaching its final stage more or less towards the end of the project. And to fully understand the potential how these outputs could be used by other projects will pose the need for some in-depth analysis on the thematic side of these outputs and how they can be utilized by other projects. So definitely some maybe facilitation, as it was mentioned, some help from JTS on that will be helpful. I was also thinking, maybe this is a bit drastic, but I was thinking that since climate change adaptation is a cross-cutting issue, it has also connection linkages to other poles. So I could say that, for instance, linkages exist between nature protection, so how to use ecosystems for adaptation purposes. There are also linkages to greener transport systems. So perhaps we could think of some stronger cooperation also between the poles so that we don't function in isolation.
So you stressed it should be from the beginning on and it should be financed. Of course, it's nice if it's possible. I would highlight why it's also positive somehow if it is not from the beginning on and not beginning on, that's not, but if it's not financed, because when we were sitting together at the very first time, we elaborated following the suggestions from the JTS, a long list of possible activities, and very soon we got the feeling, oh, that's a lot of extra work, which is not financed, we don't have the resources, and so that was a perfect filter, because within few months nobody was speaking anymore about all this what we agreed on. But the good message is I think there is not a single project which I can say it from our perspective where the capitalization is not going on after the capitalization process. So we're still going on with our follow-up projects, we're going on for a study visit very soon, we just agreed, we're going on with really concrete activities. So I think that's the good message. From the beginning on I agree that would be fine. But my experience is that sometimes these doors for cooperation opens during the project implementation. So I would strongly ask all programming bodies and JTS and so for as much flexibility in the project implementation time as possible, because sometimes the doors are open and then the projects should have the chance to use them. So for me this flexibility would be very important. And my last statement, please see this also as a compliment to our project supervisor at the JTS. I think it could be very useful if the supervisors or the project managers would have a very strong role and a lot of capacity. I don't know if this is still possible for the tenure program, but if they would have the capacity and the resources to really to accompany our projects, to follow them, to be proactive following our projects, I think that could be very useful because they have the best insight into many projects, and I think they would see the chances how to connect projects. And if a strong project supervisor combined with flexibility in the project implementation would be, I think, a guarantee for a very, very good capitalization.
Yes, I cannot repeat what the others said. I completely agree, especially the point of setting out a clear capitalization strategy from the beginning between the three new programs. Because of course the division of the Southeast Europe program increases the risk of overlapping issues, overlapping projects, apart from, of course, tearing apart the partnerships that already exist. But another point would be useful, also the interaction between capitalization activities of different programs with the same or partially the same eligible area. So I'm thinking about Central Europe, which is the main one, but also maybe some cross-border cooperation programs might be useful in order to capitalize as much as possible.
just the first element probably is a challenge, but I don't have an answer. And it concerns, let's say, how to group different projects in different poles. That's an extremely difficult exercise. So probably, let's say, the suggestion is just that, let's say, of thinking together for the next years, let's say, which, on the basis, of course, of the approved projects, which could be, let's say, the criteria or the best groups and sub-projects. I'm just thinking about pole 7, 8, and 9. Probably could be 3 subgroups, but in any way it worked because then we came to capitalizing through a sort of natural flow and process. The second point is that of visibility of products and outputs of projects. That's quite important because actually, especially for projects of which I was not aware, the capitalization served to know these outputs. Probably it's good to make it as soon as possible. And the second point is not about the doing capitalization since the very beginning, but to adopt some, let's say, standard formats of presenting the outputs of the projects, maybe not from the beginning of the project themselves, but as, let's say, a mid-development, so that it's easier to access the knowledge of the single projects. I don't know if a third idea could be of having small capitalization projects funded. When I say small, I mean very small, because I wouldn't say a few thousand euros, but few 10,000s probably. So very small projects which help the process. In any case, I agree that whatever the solutions, we should continue, definitely.
Okay, can we have very brief ending?
First of all, support all the comments from the previous speakers, so just one or two headlines from my side. Regarding green transport, of course, we need cross-thematic experts and cross-thematic exchange, because in this topic you need experts from transport, environment, education, training from the public sector. So this, I think, should be go on in the program, and also in the future program should be supported as well. And also the stakeholder involvement is important, to be coming both from the public sector, like the politician we have seen today, as well as the public sector side, like the transport sector and others. Thank you.
Yeah, and just finally, briefly, one point on timing, because this is one opportunity in this sort of cooperation and project logic, is that different projects from the same thematic pole, from the same call, have the outputs more or less in the same time. So the managing authority can help us in paving the way, that telling to, especially on national government level, saying that, okay, in half a year time, you're going to have this and this and this output. So you can start counting with this information even beforehand. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Can we have back the presentation, please? If possible, of course. We are running late, and I promised you we are going to be late, so I kept my promise to you. But the final part was that we actually asked for one word from each of the participants that would describe their experience in capitalization in southeast of Europe. And we got several keywords to create our Wordle, which is the sum up of the whole session, because you have most of the keywords that actually explain what capitalization is. And some of them are very simple, like people, and it's a personal touch we heard yesterday at the rehearsal, because we were very serious with the rehearsals. So basically, this sums up the experience with capitalization within the C so far. We hope it will continue in the future. Thank you for your participation. Sorry we're late. And there is one final announcement.
Just 2 minutes, very quick. Thank you for your participation. It's good to know that the capitalization was useful to increase the impact of your results, but also to form partnership for the future. And the future will be the topic of tomorrow's sessions, with an introduction of 3 speakers representing each of the new programs in the Southeast Europe area. And you will have time also to ask all your questions, practical questions about the future during the panel discussion. This will be at 9:30 here in the plenary session. But before that, before going for lunch, for all of you registered for the field trips, you have the numbers of the field trip you register. The hostess will collect the groups from 1:45 downstairs in the lobby for the groups 1, 3, and 4. And in the main entrance they will address people to the buses. And in the main entrance of the hotel for the groups 2, 5, and 6, 5 and 6 will share a bus, will be in front of the hotel. So basically, 1:45, from 1:45, try to be punctual in the lobby or in the main entrance, and you will find the number of your field trips. For those not being registered, probably there will be free seats in the buses, so you are invited to join the field trip you would like. You have information in your passports, you have in your packages, you have more information about the field trips, and we are inviting you to join them. I think they are quite interesting ones, and you will enjoy them a lot. Now the lunch will be served in the first floor, and after the field trip, you're invited to a cocktail reception in the first floor at 8 o'clock today. Thank you very much.